I want to explore the shifting dynamic in the deteriorating relationship between David Sullivan and David Moyes. It's a relationship that I do feel is deteriorating. We don't know this for a fact, of course. We can only take the snippets of information, the hints that we get from here and there, and put them all together and make the bigger picture and come to a summary. But I don't think in this instance that we are putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 5. I do think that it is a deteriorating relationship, but also one where there has been a massive power shift. And when I say a shift in dynamic, that's really what I mean. Who's wearing the trousers now? Who was wearing the trousers at the start? Well, I'd suggest very much at the start that David Moyes was cap in hand, in desperate need of a job, and the power firmly and squarely lay with David Sullivan. I can see that shifting. I can see that changing, and the end result will not end well, I think, if it keeps going the way it is, for David Sullivan, possibly not for West Ham either. Before I get into that, I just want to touch on the latest instalment, which feeds into the subject of the Tomori saga. For those of you who don't know, he almost signed for us on transfer deadline day. He didn't. A deal was agreed, a quite ridiculous deal, where we paid a huge loan fee for him, which you would expect, but also we would agree to give Chelsea, should I say, £50,000 every time he didn't play. It was generally just a bad deal. Anyway, so all we knew is that the deal broke down 2 minutes before the clock struck 11 for the transfer deadline. What we heard was he just turned us down. That's all we knew. But there's some more news on that. Didn't come as a big surprise to many of us, me included certainly. I just thought it was another player like Rudiger, like James Tarkowski, who had just decided to turn West Ham down. We didn't know any details, but there are some to come, and I'm going to tell you them in just a minute, and this is why I think it feeds into the deteriorating relationship between the chairman and the manager, probably the most pivotal relationship in a football club. But I wasn't surprised that he turned us down, as I say. The fact that James Tarkowski, it was the open secret, really, wasn't it? That he didn't want to come to West Ham. The fact that he decided his England credentials were better served by staying at Burnley probably says everything you need to know about how West Ham's status as a football club has not been elevated. But the extra details are really quite interesting. I'm just going to read you this article now. It said, a TalkSport presenter, Jim White, revealed that West Ham had agreed a loan deal with Chelsea, which meant the Hammers would pay £50,000 for every game he wasn't played. We know that, we've covered this. Clarence Hugh understands that with minutes of the transfer deadline to go, David Moyes spoke directly to Tomori on the phone. According to one source close to yesterday's deal, Moyes was not able to give the defender assurances over playing time despite the finances on offer by West Ham. The source believed that it was possible that Tomori was not the manager's pick, and the downbeat late talks failed to convince the player to join the Hammers. Right, that's all I want to deal with at the moment, and you can pick the bones out of that. Clarence Hugh understands that with minutes to go in the transfer deadline, David Moyes spoke directly to Tomori. Why would he speak to him then? Well, we know, because it goes on to explain it later on in the article. It wasn't David Moyes' pick. David Moyes would have already spoken to him before that. If this was somebody that David Moyes genuinely wanted, the deal would have been done with Chelsea. Chelsea would have said, yeah, look, he's not going to feature. You know, we've got some other guys in. He's not going to feature in Frank's team. We'd really like to get him out on loan. At which point David Moyes would have instructed Sullivan, do the deal. I really want this kid. Why do I want him? Because I see him on the right side of a back three. David Moyes would have been excited for the guy for Tomori to feature in the team. He would have spoken to Tomori ages ago. It wouldn't have got to that point. And when I read that, I very much felt like Sullivan had done a deal, and Sullivan was saying, "Oh, you know, David, we can't get your player. We've not been able to get Tarkowski or any of your 5 on the list, but we got Tomori. He's a good player. He's been capped by England. We can almost do the deal. We just want to speak to you on the phone first." David Moyes is no fool. David Moyes may not be the most charismatic or bubbly character, but he's going to have enough ability to turn it on the phone when he speaks to somebody. He's going to be able to feel warm. He's going to know to feel warm, to feel welcoming, to say positive things. I'm pretty sure, had David Moyes have got on that phone and said, look, I can't guarantee you a first team place, a guaranteed start, but I've wanted you for a long time. I've followed your career. As soon as you put in a good performance, you're going to be in the team. You're going to be in the team to stay. I understand you want to play for England. I'm going to do everything I can at West Ham to further your credentials. He could have said some words that would have convinced Tomori to sign. He didn't. Why? Because he was coerced. David Moyes didn't want to be on that phone call. David Moyes didn't want to convince Tomori to sign because he didn't want him. I'm no fly on the wall. I wasn't there. We'll never be privy to what was said in that conversation, but it goes on to say downbeat. Listen to this. According to one source, Moyes was not able to give the defender assurances over playing time despite the finances on offer by West Ham. Well, the player's not going to be bothered by the finances because the player's on 75 grand a week anyway. Whether he's at Chelsea, whether he's at West Ham, or whether Billericay Town, I actually haven't said that Billericay probably playing 70 grand, but whatever, they would pay 5 grand of his wages, Chelsea would pay 70. Whatever happens, he's getting £75,000 a week. So according to one source close to yesterday's deal, Moyes was not able to give the defender assurances over playing time, despite the finances on offer. It was just about playing time. And the demeanour by the manager. Listen to the next bit. The source believed that it is possible that Tomori was not a managerial pick, and the downbeat late talks failed to convince the player to join the Hammers. Downbeat. And there you have it, which is pretty much what I said. There was a dour tone, there was a depressing vibe to the whole deal. Not good at all. I think very, very bad, actually. And what it shows a player being hoisted upon the manager. And actually the manager, what's wrong about this is the manager didn't feel that he could say no. He had to subliminally get the message across to the player. So he probably said to, okay, chairman, I'll speak to him. I'll speak to him now. Got on the phone to him. Look, I can't guarantee you any play time. Basically, Tomori would have come off the phone with the absolute vibe that he wasn't wanted at West Ham. And this is what happens when you have this massive disconnect between the owner and the manager. This is why the manager has to pick the players if he's been brought in to do so. If a manager joins a club knowing that there's a director of football who he'll have to liaise with, that's quite different. And this is what I want to talk about the deteriorating nature of their relationship. Because when Moyes started his first stint, his stock was low, really low. He'd failed at Manchester United. He'd failed, was it Real Sociedad? I believe so. And he'd failed at Sunderland. By every stretch of the imagination, Sullivan was in a position then to say to him, even if it was unsaid, to say, well, we're doing you a favour here. We're doing you a favour at West Ham United. Yes, we need saving from relegation, but we're going to do you a favour. Your stock is low. You won't get a job anywhere else. We're going to give you that chance at West Ham United. At that point, Sullivan's wearing the trousers in the relationship, right? It gets to the end. David Sullivan gets rid of David Moyes, even though he's kept us up. There's your payoff, David. We're going to go in a different direction. We want more exciting, expansive football. At that point, still David Sullivan's wearing the trousers. At the point the Pellegrini experiment, let's call it that, fails, the dynamic of the relationship changes slightly, and David Sullivan's almost going cap in hands to David Moyes, saying, you know, please, can you come and save us? David Moyes would have very much known at that point he wasn't the first choice. Of course, Rafa Benitez has turned us down, and so on and so forth. Lots of managers have turned us down. The dynamics changed because David Moyes' stock's a little bit higher. David Sullivan's thinking, actually, this guy may well save us, and David Moyes thinking, I will save you. Then he does take us away from the relegation zone. His stock's risen again. All of a sudden, and I didn't think when David Moyes joined us that he was capable of getting another job at any other Premier League club. David Moyes' CV looks very different now. David Moyes' CV looks like the CV of somebody that saves teams from relegation. In many respects, he's put the Sunderland, the Real Sociedad, the Man United to a lesser extent, such a big club, it's high profile, but the majority, he's put that behind him. You're only as good as your last fight, is a boxing term. Well, David Moyes is doing pretty well in that. So again, the dynamics changed. If he continues and he does well with West Ham, bearing in mind, if you looked at yesterday's video, you saw we were in the spending charts. We are not spending much money at all. Bottom of the table. If somehow David Moyes takes us to mid-table without spending money, or actually recouping money, his stock's going to rise even higher. He's going to get to a point where at that point, he doesn't need West Ham anymore. Now, actually, I think he's quite a loyal guy. And if David Moyes was receiving a lot of love in the opposite direction, a lot of loyalty, a lot of support, he might think, well, you know what? I'm quite happy to operate under strict financial conditions if I've got the support of my chairman. This happened with Bill Kenwright at Everton. For a long time, Everton had no money, but he still had the support of his chairman. The two things can coexist. Support of the chairman, no money. Whereas at the moment, he has no money, but no support of the chairman. Because what Bill Kenwright would have done would say, David, we've got 11 million to spend in this transfer window. It's all yours. Tell me who to buy. Well, that's obviously not big money for a Premier League team, but it's still support. It's still putting your faith in him. David Sullivan's not doing that. It's a case of, look, we sold Dean Garner. There it is. There's some money there for you to spend, but I may be choosing these players. We can't get your players. We're going to get mine, and you're going to pick my players. And the only way that David Moyes can come back to that is say, basically, I don't want them, or make them feel uncomfortable on the phone so they don't sign. It's a very, very unhealthy relationship. And I just wonder if it gets to the end of that relationship and we're in a position where actually David Moyes can say, I don't need this anymore. Actually, David Sullivan might need to go and get Chris Hughton because I don't need it. It may well be that another club comes in for David Moyes and they think, well, actually, we don't have a lot of money, but we'll fully support the manager. He can keep us up. He can build a team. I mean, to not support him and not give him the squad numbers, I just think it all feeds into a very, very unhealthy relationship. David Moyes is keeping a dignified silence. Ironically, he's not announced that he's keeping a dignified silence. He just keeps silent. You don't hear anything from him. The complete opposite of what we're getting from the football club. Maybe David Moyes will bring it. Maybe we get some players. But after what we've seen and what we've heard, I think it's very, very hard to believe that whatever players David Moyes gets will be David Moyes players. Because he just would have signed them at the start of the window. Anyway, that's all I've got to say for today. Farmer Chris has sent me in a video, and I think it's fair to say Farmer Chris is equally unhappy with what he's seen.
Morning all. I haven't commented as yet on the transfer window. I'm going to now. I've had a couple of days to mull it over. I've heard the Baz interview on TalkSport. I've heard what Gio and Gonzo have had to say. Also heard reactions from other YouTube channels, and I just want to say that I'm fed up of hearing all the bullshit excuses coming through the board's mouthpieces like Jim White. It's about time Sullivan, and I'm only holding Sullivan accountable because it's nothing to do with gold or even her baroness when it comes to transfers. This is all Sullivan. Sullivan needs to come out now. He needs to address the supporters. He needs to explain his incompetence. He needs to explain why we haven't spent any money. I don't believe all this championship player bullshit that he's come out with. If we were after championship players, why didn't we get them earlier on in the window? It's a fair question, isn't it? You know, there's a lot of good championship players that have now already moved to Premier League teams months ago. So we could have had some really good players. Look at the ones Newcastle got. We have just weakened our team. We can't even do the 25-man squad. what the hell is he thinking? We are literally 1 or 2 injuries away from being relegated. I just don't know what Sullivan actually wants, because I have always been a bit up and down with him, as in, one minute I think he wants the best for the club, but he's just completely out of orbit. And then there's other times when I think that he just wants to claim as much money as possible out of the club. You know, they've spent money in areas that they didn't need to spend it in the past, and then they've left gaping holes where we have needed money spent. And they're just incompetent. The reason we've got an imbalanced squad is because of them. Sullivan, he's always the one that has to okay the transfers, even if he's given the manager the reins to actually get whoever he wants. At least so far we've not had a Salt House special come in. I'm sure we probably will by the time the transfer window shuts. I'm not the expert who the agents are for which players. Gio's usually pretty good with that sort of thing. I'm sure he'll end up doing a video on the potential Salt House players coming in or something. You know, if he's bored. But no, we need Sullivan to come out now. He needs to tell us the truth. If he has the club's, in his heart, he needs to tell us what he's going to do. Because the only thing that I think is he's trying to get as much money out of the club. He's going to sell the club, fingers crossed. But, he's asset stripping. I just don't understand what he's doing, because we don't own a stadium. The players are the only assets we've got. And he's stripping it out. He's making the club not worth anything. So what the fuck is he doing? Seriously. But it's about time that he got the balls to do a video himself, to actually put it on the West Ham page and break down his plan for everyone, because I don't think he's got a plan. He is fucked. He doesn't know how to run a club. Maybe in the 80s, early 90s, that's how you run a club. But modern day football, that is not the right way. And I think he is a couple of decades behind everyone else. He needs to get out. He needs to shut up. He needs to stop going to his little mouthpieces. Stop hiding behind them. Come out and you explain yourself, Sullivan, because I have had enough. I really have. And I really hope that no one goes back into the stadium, because that is just putting money in your pockets, and I am absolutely sick to death of you wasting the money that we give you.